Hey, I'm Jeff McAffer, and I'm coming to you from sunny Seattle, Washington, and I'm in my garage because everybody's working at home, and well, literally in my house, everybody's working from home, so this is my quiet spot. I'm a product manager at GitHub. I work on a bunch of different things, but one of my key focus points is helping folks do open source at scale, producing open source, consuming open source, and just having a great open source program. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, until recently, I was actually working at Microsoft, running their open source programs office, and that's the set of people who help the company, get good at doing open source, who do it right, and engage in a meaningful way. And my move to GitHub was really about bringing a lot of that experience and understanding that we gained at Microsoft, bringing that to GitHub, and thus enabling all of you who are doing open source to really have an open source program that rocks. And today I'm going to share some of those ideas and approaches with you. You might be thinking this doesn't really apply to me. Microsoft is such a big company, and we're just a small company or organization. That's not really true. In essence, a lot of what we learned and what we did applies to you even at a much smaller scale, because once you get past the number of things you can manage on a spreadsheet, you need some sort of automation. Once you have more than a few people, you need to sort of drive some culture change. All of those things are things I'm going to talk about here. So this all starts with a basic premise, right? This premise that I like is aspiring to be world class isn't enough when everybody else starts there. So if you start out like we often did at Microsoft in the past, saying, "Hey, I want to build some new cool application, and it's going to need a database, so let's write a database." And then, "Oh, it's going to need a UI, so let's write a UI framework." If you start off that way, you're really not going to progress very fast. Like you're going to spend all your time building that infrastructure instead of building your real value. And everybody else is going out and getting MongoDB or MySQL or React or pick your favorite technologies and putting them together. And in fact, in some ways, that's a hallmark of DevOps is taking components and assembling them into solutions quickly and with confidence. And so essentially, that's the way I see an open source program is helping you do that, enabling that fast assembly of components from open source, and also the contribution and creation of those components. So you have to start somewhere, and so everybody starts. Maybe you've got a small number of people, and this is certainly the way Microsoft was a few years ago. A small number of people using a small number of components. And then we sort of quickly advanced into having many. In fact, like 32,000 people from Microsoft are active in GitHub today. And there are many different components that we produce and projects that we use across the company. And so as that evolves quickly, you can imagine going from that very small number to a very large number of engagements that you really have to have some level of organization. I mean, this stuff doesn't just happen, right? And especially in like a DevOps world where you're running really fast, you don't really want to have to stop and figure things out every time a new component shows up, for example. Like, are there any vulnerabilities? What's the license? All that sort of stuff. You don't want to do that manually. You need some level of automation. You need an understanding that that's what you should be doing. And there's a whole set of infrastructure and approaches that come behind the scenes to make that all friction-free so that you can do continuous integration, continuous delivery, and so forth. Now, all this is needed, of course, because once in a while there's a component that is a bit of a surprise. So it's my little tip of the hat to Gene and the Unicorn Project. But in all seriousness, there might be a component that comes up that's got a vulnerability or is malicious or has a license that's not compatible with the way you're using it. And you need to know all that, and you need to know that in an automated way that's integrated into your workflows, because otherwise you won't find it. If it's manual, you won't figure it out. So that's been a lot of talk about tools and everything. And as devs, I think a lot of us are devs and we'll imagine, well, there's an app for that, or I can write a tool that'll solve that problem. And to a certain degree, you're right. There are many great tools and apps that can help here. But fundamentally, if you don't have that culture change in your organization that says, hey, we're going to use open source, we're going to engage with open source, we're going to release open source. If you don't have that culture that drives that from a business need level, then you're not, those tools are not going to be of any use to you because nobody's going to be doing it. They're not going to be engaging. And again here, you got to start somewhere, right? There's one or two people off in the corner figuring it out for themselves, putting it together manually. following the instructions from the book, step by step. And that's cool. That's a great place to start. But from a culture change point of view, the real magic starts happening when you get a lot of people together, a lot of helping hands coming in, collaborating, sharing, engaging with one another to see like, how can we do this better? How are we doing it now? Where, there's this other piece of technology we could use. And that's where it really comes together, the value of open source. But that also doesn't happen for free. You have to build a culture, build an understanding, a shared set of values, a shared set of expectations, an understanding of what's desired, what's safe, what's not desired, how to behave. Because otherwise, just like you might have ended up with sort of tool and mechanical friction, you'll end up with societal or cultural friction where people have different expectations and understandings, and it just won't go together. So you need to build that understanding and that culture as well. Now you can imagine at a company the size of Microsoft, both of those challenges, both the tooling and the culture, or the process and the culture challenges, are quite significant. And fortunately, we had a lot of help from on high. So Satya here, loving Linux. This is really great. A lot of the senior leaders in the company understood at a deep level the value of both what the value of the company, but also the value of open source in both producing and consuming. And so we had this guidance coming from top, a lot of people coming into the company who've been doing open source for a long time, and so we needed to look at how we could evolve that. Now, as you imagine, going from sort of that zero or small number to a lot of engagement, it doesn't just happen for free. There needs some sort of organization and coordination to make this happen, and that's where